All right, so for this video, I wanted to talk about how it's not your job to fix everything. It's not your job to try to save everyone. It's not your job to try to fix all the world's problems, right? Because I think that this is a sentiment that a lot of people have whenever they first look into conspiracy stuff, when they first look into the reality of the things in the world, right? That they have this sort of impulse to try to solve everyone's problems, to try to let everyone know about the truth, right? And I think that this is not necessarily like you can't save everyone, okay? And especially when it comes to evil people, I used to have this mentality when it comes to evil that it's like whenever people would do evil things to me, whenever people would do bad things to me, I would have this mentality of like, oh, did I do something wrong? Or like what do I need to fix? Or like, oh, maybe I need to understand this person's side of the story. Maybe they have maybe they have a crybaby sad backstory or whatever that explains their behavior. But it's not your job to understand evil. It's not your job to fix evil. It's not your job to understand their side of the story. It's not your job to sympathize with evil in the world. It's your job to destroy evil. And empathy is not for everyone, right? Empathy is for friends only. You should reserve empathy and that sort of impulse to try to understand people's side of the story. You should reserve that for friends only. You should reserve that for allies only, because there's people and there's evil in this world, whether it's human or non-human. There's evil in this world that's evil by nature, and it's not because they had a sad backstory. It's not because something bad happened to them that made them evil. There's evil in the world that hates the good, that wants to destroy the good, and it doesn't want to be good. Okay, so this is something I think a lot of people need to realize, is that there's evil in the world that doesn't want to be good. And in order to combat this evil, in order to combat we need to learn how to selectively have empathy for the right people. You can't humanize or sympathize with demons. Okay, don't sympathize with demons, don't humanize demons. Don't say like, oh, but like what if they had a bad, what if like something bad happened to them? Because I've heard this a lot when it comes to the archons, when it comes to demonic entities, is they say, oh, but like what if something bad happened to them, and like what they're doing is like a trauma response or something like that, right? Like I've heard people say that before, and I think that those people, they're projecting their goodness onto evil, right? Because like, I think we have a tendency to project what we have inside onto other people, onto other beings, right? But I think that's not true. I think we really need to understand that not everyone can be saved, metaphorically speaking. Not everyone wants to be saved. And not everyone wants the truth. And I genuinely believe that whenever this soul trap matrix comes crashing down, I think that there's going to be a lot of people that are going to get destroyed with it, because there's a lot of people on this planet, whether it's because they're NPCs or whether they've reincarnated so many times that their code is dependent on the matrix, right? That they're a part of the system now, and there's people in this world that are beyond saving. There's people in this world that are beyond telling the truth to. There's people that you can't even tell the truth to. If it's right in their face, they would never acknowledge it, right? So it's not your job to save everyone. And I think that this sort of heroic impulse, I guess you could say, that I think a lot of good people in the world have this inside them, where they feel like they want to fix the world's problems. They feel like they want to fix. They feel like they have to let people know the truth, and they want to save everyone, right? I think a lot of people have this mentality, but this is also a thing that I think the archons will use to trick people into reincarnating, because like, oh, but you have a mission, right? Like this is the typical one of the typical things that the archons will use, like, oh, you have a soul mission. You have a mission back on Earth that you need to complete in order to advance to the next level of like your soul's development or whatever, right? And so I think that this is something that I think a lot of people need to realize, is that you don't need to have empathy for everyone. Empathy is not for everyone. It's not your job to fix the world's problems. It's not your job to solve all the world's problems. And it's not your job to try to understand evil. Like anytime someone's an evil person, I think that this is something that is with me in particular. Anytime someone does something evil to me, I think my first instinct is to try to understand, okay, why did they do that? Or is it something about me that triggered them, or is it something that like that they're going through suffering, they're going through traumas or something that I need to understand or whatever. But when it comes to evil people, it's not your job to understand them. It's not your job to sympathize with them. It's not your job to fix them. It's not your job to empathize with evil. Okay, anytime someone does evil, it doesn't matter what their backstory is. It doesn't matter, like you don't have to understand why they did it. There's people and there's entities that are non-human that are evil by nature. Like, why do they do evil? Because it's in their nature to do so. Okay, and this is something that people need to understand about the archons. People need to understand about the narcissistic people running the world, is that they will use empathy against people in bad faith. They'll use like this whole I think there's I've heard this term used before, which is called suicidal empathy. People will use the narcissists, right, the archons, they'll use empathy against people in bad faith. They'll use the appeal to empathy, like, oh, but I had a sad backstory. I promise I'll change. They'll use that against people in bad faith, and people, there's a lot of good people in the world, I think, that have, they have empathy to a point where it harms them. They have empathy to the point where it harms them, right? Which is suicidal empathy, and I think that that needs to stop. I think this is something that I'm sort of working on programming out of my system. I think that this idea that I need to understand everyone's side of the story, that anytime someone does something evil against me, I need to understand why they did what they did. Maybe they're going through some trauma or whatever, but no, like there's evil in the world, and it's not because something bad happened to them. It's not because they were made this way. It's because, like, there's evil in the world that they're just born that way, and they're evil by nature. And you don't have to understand it. You don't have to sympathize with because it's evil. You don't have to sympathize with evil. This is one of the ways that evil weaponizes good people, the goodness of good people against them. They weaponize the basic empathy against people. Is they try to do the appeal to empathy. They try to do like, oh, but you need to understand my my side of the story, or I'll promise I'll change. I've just been through a lot. Like there's a lot of narcissists that I've encountered throughout my life that they'll use like this appeal to empathy they've used this appeal to empathy to take advantage of me, because I'm like, oh, okay, like I think that, that this person might need my help or whatever, and they end up I end up getting scammed or whatever. And most of that happened when I was a little kid. I think I sort of learned after a while. But I think that this is something that I'm still learning how to do, is that, like, you don't need to understand evil. It's not your job to understand evil. It's not your job to fix evil. It's not your job. It's not your job to fix the world's problems. It's not your job to save everyone. You don't have to have that suicidal empathy. It's your obligation is two things. And number one is that you look out for yourself, you take care of yourself, and number two is to to be a good person if you have the power to do so, right? But you can't help people if you can't help yourself, right? Like you can't help other people if you can't help yourself, right? So you can't have that mentality where it's like, oh, I need to help this person if your situation's not where it needs to be. If you're not in a place of life where you need to be, then it's not your job to help other people. It's not your job to fix every single person's problem, right? And I think that we need to sort of reduce that sort of bandwidth. Like we need to stop feeling empathy for every single person in the world, because there's evil people in the world that don't deserve empathy. Okay, and I think that we should have a very selective way that we feel empathy for other people. I think that we need to you know and yet again, this is something that I'm personally learning, is that I'm learning how to not have that this sort of oh, but like it was something that was it something that I did wrong, or do it like I need to understand this person's side of the story. I need to understand where they're coming from, so that I can help them or whatever. Like I need to stop doing that, because I think that that is something that I've had in my mind for a while now, and I think that I need to be more selective of who I have empathy for. I think I need to be more selective of who I sympathize with, because if there's people that do evil in the world, then it doesn't matter what their backstory was. They chose the side of evil, and I think we need to be more harsh in our judgments against evil people. And we can't have this mentality of like of trying to feel sorry for every single person that does a bad thing, just because we think that there might be a reason for it. We're trying, like, and I think most of this is that, like, we're confused whenever someone does something evil. There's a certain confusion that I have personally whenever someone does something like animal abuse, when someone does something like child abuse, whenever these things happen in the world, I get confused on, like, why would something do something like that, right? And I think that this is one of the ways that I think we try to understand why, like, why would this person do something like that, as we try to say, oh, but like we try to project ourselves onto them, and we say, oh, but maybe something bad happened to them that made them this way. But no, like there's people in the world that, like, nothing bad happened to them. Maybe they were born into like a rich family. Maybe they were born with all the advantages in the world, and they're just narcissistic. There's evil in the world that's evil by nature, and you don't have to understand evil. That's the other thing too, is that you don't have to understand, okay, why would they do something like this? Like, no, evil's that way because evil's that way, and it's not your job to try to understand it or try to sympathize with it. It's your job to destroy it. Whenever you see, a huntsman spider in your room, you don't try to understand why it's there. You just grab the flamethrower and you set it on fire, right? And I think that mentality of, like, that flamethrower mentality, it should apply to evil people. When it comes to, pedophiles, when it comes to, rapists, when it comes to animal abusers, it's not our job to try to understand them, to try to sympathize with them, to try to rehabilitate them. It's not our job to do that. It's not our job to fix the world's problems. And I think that we need to learn that, empathy is not for everyone. That, there are bad people in the world that don't deserve the same empathy, the same treatment, as other people that do deserve that treatment, right? I think that, and I think most of this is understanding that there's evil in the world that will take advantage of that suicidal empathy, and to learn how to watch out for it, to learn how to reserve empathy for the people who deserve it. Right, but yeah, I mean, it's not your job to be a hero. It's not your job to fix the world's problems. It's not your job to try to rehabilitate every evil person that you come across, right? Because, there's people that are beyond saving. It's not your job to save everyone, and not everyone wants to be saved, and not everyone can be saved, right? But yeah, that's the video.